I'm an EU nerd. I fully admit that. You know, I love the EU stuff. I've been dealing with it, research, civil servant, politics all of my life. It's pretty much the only thing I know. Yeah. What I will try to do basically today is to pose 3 questions and try to provide you with 3 answers. And I'll start pretty much with the basics and move into the contemporary or day-to-day business, if you will. The 3 questions that I'll pose today is, the first one is, why do we need a European Union? So why do we have an EU? Because we have a tendency to forget that. Then secondly, why are we in a crisis right now? And then thirdly, I'll answer the question, how are we going to get out of this crisis? And I'll give you a bit of a warning, because you need to know where I come from. I'm a European federalist. I'm very pro-European, and I'm also an eternal optimist. So, you know, take whatever I say with a pinch of salt, if you will, even though I might be sugarcoating it a little bit. So the first question then is, why does the European Union exist? If I posed the question to you and would ask you to give 4 reasons for why the European Union was founded in its basic format in 1952 with the coal and steel community, what would you say? What are the 4 reasons why the EU exists? Free trade, or would you say welfare perhaps? Yeah.
First of all, peace and security.
Peace, that's number 1, yeah.
Cooperation.
Yeah, cooperation, that's an instrument.
Engage Germany.
Engage Germany, yeah, that's probably the peace thing. But usually what I use is peace, prosperity, security, and stability. So peace, prosperity, security, and stability. Pretty much what every international or national entity wants to do. Then you have various ways of doing it. In the European Union, there's always been a firm belief in 2 ideologies, if you will. One is liberal democracy, freedom, and the other one is a social market economy. But the European Union was basically founded, as you said, for peace. And the instruments that were used were economic. And they were, of course, the free movement of goods, services, money, and labor. That was the basic idea. And the basic idea was that Germany and France had been in war over 50 years 3 times. 2 of them led to world wars. We needed to find a way to pool sovereignty. And Jean Monnet talked about it. He said, we basically need to make war impossible between France and Germany. And to a certain extent, you could say that it's been very successful. But what a lot of people outside the European Union don't understand is the degree of pooling of sovereignty that we have done. The European Union has exclusive competence over trade. So when we negotiated the WTO, it's not me as trade minister, it's Karel de Gucht, who is the commissioner for trade. The European Union has exclusive competence basically over fisheries and agriculture. We don't decide on our own agriculture. The basic money for it and the rules come from the European Union. Competition, so how big companies can be, what kind of cartels they can form. It's not us deciding, it's the European Union who does it. Customs, it's not us deciding what kind of customs duties we have. We do it together in the European Union. So we have institutions and laws which stand above national laws. Now, I know in Kazakhstan there's a lot of talk about the customs union between Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. It's nice, but I want to see the 3 of these countries establishing true institutions. I want to see a system whereby Russia can be told what their customs duties can be. I want to see a system where Russia can be told that, sorry, our customs union laws stand above Russian laws. I mean, these are huge sacrifices in terms of pooling of sovereignty. On top of that, of course, nowadays we have a common currency. 17 out of 27 EU countries have a common currency. The EU has exclusive competence over monetary policy. We don't set our interest rates. It's the European Central Bank that sets our interest rates. And to be quite honest, and I'll get back to it in a second, It's not very easy to be a Finn, one of the few countries that fulfill all the Euro criteria and are AAA rated, at the same time having to pay for other countries who are in the Eurozone who haven't taken care of their economy. So what I'm trying to say is that European integration exists for the four reasons that I mentioned: peace, prosperity, security, and stability. We have strong institutions and strong laws, and it is a unique experiment in world politics. The European Union is a hell of a lot more than any international organization in this world, but it is less than a state. So it's hovering somewhere in between there. So this is what I wanted to say, my question: why does the European Union exist? Now, the second question I wanted to pose today is, why is the European Union then in a so-called crisis? My take is that the European Union goes through 10-year crisis cycles. We are a crisis management organization. It's like any politics, you know, it's always one crisis after another. So in the 50s, the coal and steel community is built because World War II has ruined Europe. It's a pretty major crisis. You need to start thinking of ways of integrating. In the 1960s, we noticed that this economic and steel and coal community could be expanded into a European economic community. What is the crisis? The crisis is the French say, no, we don't want majority decisions. So they put the empty chair crisis and refused to cooperate with the Council of Ministers. And that is solved. In the 1970s, it's all about the oil crisis. Europe is going down the drains, our economies aren't growing hard enough. On top of that, we have the height of the Cold War. We're wondering, is social market economy working better than authoritarian socialist systems? And we try to figure it out. In the 1980s, it's all about the internal market. We realize in order for us to get economic value added, we need to integrate further. In the 1990s, the Cold War ends. Eastern and Central Europe starts knocking on the door of the European Union. Hey, we want to join you guys too. So it's an enlargement crisis. You know, how are we going to be able to go first from 6 to 9 in 1973, from 9 to 10 in 1980, from 10 to 12 in 1987, from 12 to 15 when Finland, Austria, and Sweden joined in 1995, to 25 in 2004, and then to 27 in 2007. As you can imagine, you know, when you go from 6 to start off with to 27, you get an enlargement crisis. In the decade of 2000 to 2010, we had an institutional crisis. We're supposed to have a constitution, which was voted down in France and the Netherlands, the two founding states. Then we're supposed to have a Lisbon Treaty, which was voted down in Ireland. So we needed to get the institutions sorted out. Now, we are in a crisis again. And what is the crisis? It's an economic crisis. It's a debt crisis, it's a financial crisis, you can call it whatever you like. The interesting thing with the crisis is that, of course, it didn't start in the European Union. It started in the United States with the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers. The financial crisis then spun into a debt crisis, which was basically caused by the fact that a lot of banks were giving a lot of cheap money out to a lot of companies and people who were misusing that money. And that was one of the core problems of the Eurozone. People in Greece were getting loans for the same price as people in the Netherlands, whereas the public economy was not in the same shape in Greece as it was in the Netherlands. One of the basic problems we had is that we had a monetary union without an economic union. Yes, we had the Stability and Growth Pact, but when France and Germany violated the Stability and Growth Pact in 2003, everyone else thought that we can violate it too. So we are in this crisis probably because finance ministries didn't want to pool their sovereignty in the 1990s or in 2000. And we're trying to cope with it all the time. It's not an easy crisis to be in. At the same time, I would argue that we have a wrong reference point. If you look at the international media, by the way, there's a vicious circle here. Politicians talk loose stuff, media interprets it, and then the markets react to it. And we're sort of in this self-fulfilling prophecy of, isn't the euro going to break up? Isn't Greece going to leave the euro? My answer is no, it's not, and no, it's not. The EU takes its best decisions when it has its back against the wall, and I'll get back to that in a second. But it's very much a crisis of confidence. We don't trust each other anymore in the way in which we used to. And I'll just give you one example of that. We had rules in the euro, they call the EMU rules, that you're not supposed to have over 60% of your GDP in debt, that you're supposed to keep your budget deficit down to below 3%, and then you have some inflation rules. There are only 3 countries that fulfill those rules now. They're Estonia, Luxembourg, and Finland. These superpowers, right? And we only have 4 euro countries that are AAA rated. And why? Because a lot of the markets have lost confidence in individual euro countries. Greece is one example. Didn't take care of their public finances, lied about their statistics, and have been overspending. And all of us suffer from it. As a pro-European, for me, it's very much a question of fairness. You know, I don't want to be in trouble because someone else has not taken their share of the deal. That's the basic mentality that we have in this crisis. And it's not an easy position to be in. You can imagine what the electorate is like in Finland right now. It is still very pro-European, pro-Euro, but it's not very happy about bailing out banks in Spain or banks in Greece for that matter. So it's a very difficult situation to be in. And the crisis has also caused a split between the North and the South, which I find unfortunate, because us in the North, even though we've been taking care of our economies, we should remember and look back 20 years ago. Finland and Sweden had an awful banking crisis. The Netherlands and Denmark were not competitive economies, and Germany was considered to be the sick man of Europe. So it's not exactly like we've been pitch perfect either. But now there's sort of this new Berlin Wall being created between the North and the South. And I think we have to be very careful about it. In the debate, in the crisis, it's very much 2 camps. You have those who are trying to get bread on the table day to day. They basically want to stimulate the economies, they want to get the money. And then you have those who belong to the austerity camp, who've taken care of their finances, who are AAA rated and say, sorry, we have to be conditional. If you want help, you have to make sure that you do this, that, and that with your economy, otherwise we won't help you. So this is the balancing act that we're trying to deal with. Now, my third and final question before we go into Q&A is that, are we going to survive this crisis? And my answer is yes. And I'll try to give you a few positive indications or a few positive signs about the crisis. First of all, if you look at the past 8 weeks or so, markets have been fairly calm and a lot of good things have happened. Good thing number 1, the ECB took a decision to pump in money into the system. What happened? This drove down the interest rates of Spain, of Italy, of Portugal, and of Ireland. And this is very important for these countries, because when they were trying to get money from the market by selling government bonds, the money that they had to pay was at worst between 6 and 7%. That's huge. Finland and Germany have interest rates on their government bonds between 1 and 2%. So you can imagine how much money is involved in that. The ECB action drove down the interest rates in these countries. That's good news. Good news number 2, elections in the Netherlands. They could have gone wrong. Anti-European parties, nationalist parties could have won. They didn't. The pro-European side won. Good news number 3 is the Commission's proposal on a banking union. It's a very important step. If you have free movement of money, if you have a common currency, wouldn't it be quite useful to have a common banking authority to make sure that banks are under control? It's not going to be an easy debate. There are a lot of weak banks out there, not least in Germany, like the Landesbank, for instance. But we need to come up with a bank union.